I'm going to present today a hypothetical situation and some real life actual situations that have happened. This is not to scare you. This is just to say I've heard so many stories like this.
There is no what if.
When we're talking about tripping alone versus tripping with others, we can literally be talking about life and death. This video has been a long time coming. This has been a comment that I get incessantly. Here's the thing everybody wants to know. Can I trip alone? Can I trip by myself?
The following video is made for the purpose of education and harm reduction. We are not promoting the use, procurement, or possession of any plant medicine or substance. We encourage everyone to do further research and prioritize safety.
If you're watching this video today and you like cookies, what are your favorite types of cookies to bake? This will come in handy later, but what kind of cookies do you like to bake? I am a chocolate chip oatmeal cookie with fleur de sal salt on the top.
No, I don't think you understand. I'm obsessed.
You know what? I'm gonna link my favorite recipe below. But yeah, tell me what kind of cookies you like in the comments.
You'll see why later.
Now, this video is obviously not for experienced psychedelic journeyers. This is for folks who would consider themselves new to the psychedelic experience or beginner to moderately experienced. This is not for folks who have been journeying for 15, 20, 25 plus years. I'm not gonna tell y'all what to do. I'm not gonna tell anybody what to do. But if you are looking for a yes to that question.
You serious?
This is not the channel for you to be on, friend. This is a harm reduction channel. This is a channel where I keep it real, and sometimes keeping it real doesn't always mean keeping it fun. Sometimes keeping it real means keeping it safe. So, if you want a yes to that question, you can get it from so many other people on YouTube. Are you kidding me? You can get that from so many other girls on here telling you how to trip alone, how to have a psychedelic experience by yourself. That's not about to be me. I'm not gonna tell you that. I mean, I'm gonna give you a solution if you want to trip alone. But first, you might be sitting there, you might be asking, well, who am I? I am Chrysantilus. Hello, if you are new here, welcome. This channel is a realm dedicated to psychedelics and sacred plant medicine, all about demystifying and destigmatizing the trip. As I mentioned, this is a space of harm reduction. I am not going to give you the funnest route. I'm not going to give you the path that you want to hear. If you are looking for one specific path, one specific thing, this is most likely not going to be it. So if you want to stick around and hear why that is, and you want some firsthand experiences from people who tripped alone and how that ended up for them.
Oh no, I hope I don't fall. No.
Please stay watching because I have some stories to tell. But here's the main thing, right? If you're wondering, well, what's the worst that could happen?
Okay, I get it.
We're gonna hop into that, all right? So I'm going to present today a hypothetical situation, some real life actual situations that have happened by folks who I know who have either tripped alone or who have gotten separated from a group that they were with during a trip. And this is not to scare you. This is just to say I've heard so many stories like this.
There is no what if.
And I don't wanna glorify psychedelics as something that's like 100% completely safe, no matter if you're doing it with friends or by yourself. Set and setting matters. Trip sitting matters. And when we're talking about tripping alone versus tripping with others, we can literally be talking about life and death, and I will get into why. And then lastly, I'm gonna give y'all a solution for if you absolutely wanna trip alone, but you know, don't wanna be around others. It's understandable. Like, I feel where you guys are coming from. So the problem is one of two problems. One, folks want to trip, but they don't want to do the prep work. This to me is a bigger problem than the other one, which we'll get into. Folks want to trip, but they don't want to put the work into set and setting. They don't want to put the work into finding a trip sitter. They don't want to put the work into anything else but sourcing. I want to source, I want to trip, and that's it. You know, maybe if we're talking about alcohol, that could work for you, but with sacred plant medicine and psychedelics in general, you're not gonna have the best time if you don't do enough prep. You know, it's all about finessing that set and setting. So you might have that, problem number one, or you might have problem number two, which I think is the minority of people. But problem number two is that you are not in a living situation or a reality where you can find anyone to trip sit. So for a lot of folks where that's the case, maybe you live at home, maybe you're under the age of 18 or 21, and in that case, I'm going to say you probably don't need to be tripping at all. You can wait until your prefrontal cortex develops, friend. You do not need to be tripping if you are a teenager. And a lot of folks comment on here and they're like, I'm 18, can I trip? I'm not gonna say yes to that because you are scientifically too young to be able to do that. We are aware of the impact on the young mind that a psychedelic so, quote, harmless as cannabis can even have, right? Cannabis can have detrimental effects on your mind if you are too young and you sit with it. So yeah, but let's say you're old enough to sit with this medicine, you've successfully sourced this medicine, you've successfully tested this medicine, you just do not have anybody else around you who can trip sit for you. All right, maybe you live in a bunker. Hopping right into it, the first question I would ask you is, what is the rush? What is your personal rush to sit with this medicine? And what is hindering you from waiting patiently to have this experience in a safe way, all right? Today, I want you to really question the folks in your life and why you don't want to reach out to them. I want you to question, your friends that you might have. Maybe your situation is very real and everybody you know is long distance. You just moved to a new city. You don't have anyone that you can safely journey with. And to that, I would just say, wait until you can journey with folks. Now, if your issue is you do have folks that you want to journey with, but you just don't want to be around everyone because you're afraid to embarrass yourself in some sort of a way, you don't want people to see you when you're journeying, I have a harm reduction solution for that, so keep watching. But there are many different reasons why you might not have someone who could be an easy trip sitter right now. For the most part, I'm going to say, just wait till you do. There's no harm in waiting. Wait until you do have that in your life. Again, this is for people who are inexperienced with journeying. You don't know the troubleshooting methods quite yet. You don't know the workarounds. For a lot of folks, you don't know not to call 911. You don't know that you're not dying, But unfortunately, most of the psychedelics that I talk about on this channel are classified as a Schedule 1 substance, which means in certain places, we're looking at a minimum of 3 to 4 years in prison, okay? So there are very real reasons why you do not want to be messing with this alone, especially if you don't know not to call 911. For the vast majority of people who want to call 911 when they're tripping, it's something going on up here. It's not that they actually need real medical attention. And not to say what's going on right here isn't real. It could be very real. The panic is very real. I've experienced it myself, but you don't want paramedics there and you certainly don't want the police there. That's first. So let's get into this hypothetical situation, right? People want to trip by themselves, inexperienced. What's the worst that could happen? Well, science has shown that when we trip, we regress into a childlike state or a toddler-like state. There are even scans of baby brains that look identical to the scans of brains of those who are journeying on acid in terms of what regions of the brains are activated. It's absolutely fascinating. So let's say we take you. We're gonna dial the meter back a bit. We're gonna put you at about a 6 or 7, right? 6 or 7? Would you leave yourself alone at home 6 or 7? For some of y'all, you might be like, yeah, what's the problem? My parents left me alone at 6 or 7 without a babysitter. I don't see what the problem is. For most of us, that might not be the case. For most of us, we haven't been 6 or 7 for a while. So getting blasted back to the past is not going to be something that we're used to. We're gonna need to get our footing, in that childlike state. So when we are journeying, we are really like children, and that can be fun and that can be funny, but it can also be scary and it can also be dangerous, right? So let's say you're journeying, you got some magic mushrooms, you're by yourself, and you're doing all of these different things. You're having the best time, right? So you're painting, you are repotting some plants, maybe you're looking through some art books that you have, and an idea pops in your mind. Oh my gosh, I want to bake cookies. I love cookies. So you go, you put a bunch of cookies on the pan, you put the cookies in the oven. You're so happy, you're so excited. A friend calls. Hey friend, I am journeying too. Do you wanna go for a walk? And you're like, heck yeah, I wanna go for a walk. You go for a walk with this person. You go on a hike. You know what I mean? You're hanging out with this person. And they're like, why don't you come back to my place? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? All this kind of stuff. You can get so easily swept with the wind, swept with the music of the things, the art of the things, the nature of things. All these really beautiful experiences. If you don't have someone to be like, yo, you got cookies in your oven, just think about what the worst thing that could happen is if you forget cookies in your oven. Just think. And it sounds like something that wouldn't slip your mind, but I can't tell you how many times I have lost my cell phone journeying. And at this point, I'm just like, here, take my cell phone. I shouldn't have it. I will lose that. You lose some of your facilities that keep you safe in a typical day-to-day setting. You don't, I said facilities, I think I meant faculties. The gears aren't quite going the same way they are in your right now 2022 adult mind. You know, you are regressed some, you lose things more easily, things seem more fragile. All of the time I'll accidentally bump into my computer and be like, I broke it. You think that you broke things that you didn't break, you'll lose things that you thought you had. You thought you knew where your cell phone was and it's back at your house and like you're on a hike now, you know? All of these things. So I say all that to say it's really easy to forget that there are cookies in the oven. It's really easy to try to make dinner and then, you know, you could cut yourself. Like, you shouldn't even be cooking. Like, food prep becomes something that's super not necessarily very safe.
Hello?
And then this is all given that the dose is exactly as you expected it to be, right? And for me journeying, I know that is rarely the case. The dose is as expected. You know, the dose is usually a little bit more intense or a little bit less intense than you think it's gonna be, but it's like rarely exactly at the intensity level that you think it will be at. And that's just because psychedelics are completely unpredictable. So in this hypothetical, in this cookies hypothetical, maybe you think you're taking a low dose and you think your dose is gonna be enough to bake cookies. I'm gonna take a small dose. But the dose ends up being some golden teacher mushrooms that are particularly strong, and you weren't given a solid heads up about that by your source, and all of a sudden you are in a moderate dose, and you've already made these cookies, and now you're juggling all of these different things. There's something to be said about the unpredictability of dose and how that affects our ability to trip safely alone, right? Now, with something like LSD, it's a little bit more simple because you could have tried these tabs and you know how they're gonna affect you if you take the same amount. But I will go into a bit of firsthand experience from a friend of mine about why that is not necessarily even the case with LSD, right? So, I have a good friend who gave me permission to share the story. And this is one of the many stories that I've heard before on folks who decided to journey alone. So they took one tab. Please keep that in mind while I am sharing this with you. They took one tab of LSD and decided that they were going to journey alone. I'm going to read what they have written to me to say in this video. These are some of their major notes. So, it was a much higher dosage than they had expected. They thought it was going to be one tab. They decided to journey alone. They took only one tab. The visuals became so intense that they bled together and effectively blinded me. Sometimes we see this in HPPD, hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, but also we can see this in visual snow, which is sometimes a certain snowiness when they trip, right? For my friend here, I believe that this was like a fractalized experience, so everything became so fractalized that they could just not discern the mic from the computer, you know what I mean? Getting back to what they've said, it took a lot of self-convincing to leave and get the help I knew I needed. I had to rely on help from strangers to cross the streets. I could not distinguish cars. Now, what they're saying here is effectively their life was in danger. If those folks weren't around and they had to get to their friend's house, you know, and they had to cross the street, how would they be able to do that without being able to see? What kind of leap of faith would they have to take to be able to cross a street with loads of oncoming traffic and just imagine all the while not being able to clearly see the cars and the streets and, you know, what's going on around them. My friend was quick to respond and helped me get home. They reassured me the things I was worried about, mostly safety of myself and my cat, were okay. I feel like I learned a lot from the experience. Having someone physically nearby while tripping solo helps if you can't use your phone to call for help. Setting up care and safety plans for pets is reassuring. I also gleaned personal lessons from the ordeal. right? So my friend wanted me to let y'all know that this was not only a bad experience for them, given the mouthfeel of just like being absolutely terrifying on the surface, they learned things from this lesson and they wouldn't describe it as all bad, all horrifying, just a nightmare. It was a nuanced experience they had. That being said, what most likely happened here was that the blotting paper of the LSD that they had sourced had some sort of improper and extreme absorption. So they were taking maybe 10 hits in one, maybe 15, 20 hits in one because of the severity of this absorption. And whoever gave them this LSD didn't think that that was gonna happen. I believe that other folks in their life had tried this specific paper and didn't have the same issue. But yeah, this can happen, especially if the person making this medicine does not realize that they have improperly blotted the paper, which, you know, it shouldn't happen, but it does. And this was a really scary experience for them. Thank goodness there were great and helpful and reliable people around. But I hate to say this, for my friends and folks who have told me these stories, it tends to be like the time that you have decided to trip alone that these things go wrong. Like, I don't know what it is. It just seems to be like a rule of the universe and psychedelics that it's like everything will go right when you're around other people, and then the one time you decide to trip alone, the ish hits the fan. So that is one example of a story. My friend was all right. They made it across their neighborhood to see their other friend who fortunately happened to be home. Fortunately, this was a good friend, and they were met with a bunch of reassurance, like, it's okay. When we're talking about like, what's the worst that could happen if I trip alone? Dosage, like getting the dosage wrong, like thinking that you are dosing small to moderate dose and having a heroic dose, you know? That's definitely something that I've seen gone wrong for folks who journey alone. And then I think you should ask yourself, are you prepared for that to happen? Are you prepared to have a heroic dose alone? I don't think that's something I would really want to do. Another story, I had a friend from college who went on a hike with their friends, and they decided, like, oh, I feel called to wander off. I'll wander off and I'll meet back with you guys at the spot, whatever. Their dosage ended up being not what they expected it to be, and they lost their depth perception, unfortunately. And while they were on this hike, things started shifting, things started growing, things started shrinking. They lost their footing and somehow slipped down off of a cliff, and paramedics had to be called. Paramedics had to be called to retrieve them. It took a while because they were on a hike. It took a while to reach them. And all the while, imagine you're being picked up by paramedics and put into the ambulance and you're still journeying, having to hide the fact that you're journeying so that they don't get law enforcement involved. And it was just not fun. This person seriously injured themselves. I believe they were in a cast for months after that. And I don't hear of stories like that happening when you have friends around, you know, and especially when you have a trip sitter around. A trip sitter is ideal. I realize that it's not always possible. So for myself, I just always have someone around me. And I like to surround myself with, if I'm gonna be around people who are journeying, we are going to be journeying at different increments. So either they'll have their come up first and their peak first, and then I'll have my come up and peak first, or reverse. But y'all, I never trip alone. And sometimes that has meant that I don't get to trip for 2 to 4 months. And that's all right. I would much rather do it right than have some kind of experience I can't come back from doing it wrong, and that tainting the medicine in some sort of way for me, because I always tie it back to that one time, you know, that one time I burned the house down. That is a story that I have read. Actually, I live in the city of Baltimore. Actually, there is some really great Baltimore folklore specifically that involves Cookie Mueller, who was a John Waters actress. Burning somebody's house down, literally burning somebody's house down, somebody else's house. So yeah, just know I'm not making this stuff up. I've heard this from many people. A lot of folks in the psychedelic community, they don't like to talk about what could go wrong. They don't like to be alarmist, and I hope that I'm not coming off as alarmist today. I really am just trying to come from a harm reduction perspective and let y'all know what can happen. So yeah, both of the stories that I've shared today can affect not just like your thought processing and your thinking and your prioritizing in terms of the leaving of the cookies in the oven, but also the physical effects that psychedelics can have on you in terms of visual impairment. I know acquaintances who have tried to get in cars, and whoop, out the window goes their depth perception. You see how that makes driving a little bit more complicated? You see how that works? So please consider that this will not just affect you up here, but it can affect you sensory-wise. It can visually impair you for a certain amount of time. And, you know, it's not necessarily something that you ever plan on. But with these medicines, things do not always go as according to plan. And would you want to be alone when things don't go according to plan? For me, I'd like to have somebody by my side who I could say, hey, I'm not being able to see well right now. Should we continue hiking? And they could be like, no. Let's sit by this boulder and chill out for a little bit and drink some water. It's also good to have like a sounding board, you know? Someone to be like, oh, my timer actually just went off for the cookies in the oven. Man, this video is really gonna make me wanna bake some cookies. I'm gonna get to doing that soon. But I've said all of this to say, I do have a solution. I do have a solution. First, when we're journeying, we're gonna always let somebody else know that we're journeying, whether there's somebody else there or not. There should be somebody else there. But we're going to let a friend, a buddy, a sibling, whatever, whoever's close to you, please let them know that you're journeying and maybe say, hey, check in with me this evening. Please make sure everything's okay. You don't have to do that, but you know, you'll have somebody on call in case things go a little awry to be like, hey, kind of freaking out right now or whatever. 2, the folks around us know we're journeying, right? In case something goes wrong, we don't want to be journeying in our parents' basement and then all of a sudden have to go upstairs and say, hey mom, guess what? I brought a Schedule I substance into your household and I need medical attention. No, we don't, it's too much to put on other people. We're not going to do that. We're going to let folks around us know that we're journeying. And here is my solution. If you want to trip alone together. So what that looks like is you find a friend who wants to trip alone or who is down to be there while you are tripping or who wants to trip with somebody else while you're tripping. And you quarantine yourself, basically. You find a room, you make that room your trip den, you have a nice time. If you have any cookie baking plans, you are going to share those cookie baking plans with that friend. They are going to be a sounding board, you know, but you're gonna have the understanding that, hey, unless things go a little bit awry, we're not going to bother each other for X amount of time. You know, for me, that could be like 3 to 4 hours. I'd like to be alone. I think this is a safe workaround. This is given that you are indoors. You're not on a hike where you can wander off, get lost, nothing like that. You're indoors, you're having an indoor trip. And you know, you are in a room alone, but there are others nearby in case you need help. You know, maybe you're tripping with one other person and they might need your help. Who knows how these things work? So anyways, that would be my solution. Trip alone together, you know? And if you don't have anybody that you can do this with, I would say wait until you are at the point in your life that you do. I'm sorry, that's not the fun answer. This is completely a harm reduction channel. I'm not going to tell you to do the thing that I've seen my friends get extremely hurt by, and acquaintances and people on the internet and all this kind of stuff. I don't want psychedelics to have a bad rap. I want all of us to have a safe time with it. I want us to all have an awesome time with it. I want us to learn and grow. And the way we do that is by developing a safe and respectful practice with these medicines so that we don't get into the situation where we're on the highway and we have to pull over because we've lost our depth perception. And that's the story we tell our aunt, you know? God forbid, she's watching Fox News every night. She doesn't need to hear another piece of psychedelic propaganda from you. By the way, if you are preparing for a psychedelic experience, please be sure to check out my video, How to Prep for a Psychedelic Experience. So, I think, again, if you want another take, find another channel. But this is all you're gonna get from this channel right now. And if you've enjoyed what you've gotten from this channel, please be sure to subscribe. We're working our way to 5,000 subs. We just hit 4,000 subs today. I'm very proud of it. I'm really happy. We're on a roll. We're on a really solid roll. So I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I am at Chrysantilus there. You can support this channel by purchasing our merch. I design everything myself. You can get some of this cool, keep it trippy stuff And I also soft launched a Patreon, which you can visit, link in description. Just visit it, that's all I'm asking, just visit it. But if you dig it, there's exclusive merch on there, and there's a Discord, you can get your name in the credits, all that fun, cute Patreon stuff. Shout out to my 5 patrons. Y'all are holding it down for me. I appreciate you. I know everybody by name, okay? It's tight-knit on my Patreon right now, okay? It's tight-knit. But yes, we are tripping with friends. We are nailing that set and setting. We are tripping with a trip sitter. You know, we are getting it done. And if you would like to trip, but you don't have a source and you don't know how you're gonna find someone to trip with, all that kind of stuff, link in my description for trials. There's a solid chance that if you're in the US, you'll be able to find a trial to join, to trip with a professional practitioner. I will direct you to that there. But yes, YouTube, thank you so much for watching me today. I appreciate you. I know that what I have said is not fun, but I am the harm reduction girl.
What the hell is even that?
I am not the relentless party time rave 24/7 girl. You can find them. They're on here. I promise. You can find the How to Trip Alone videos on YouTube, okay? No. That's not what we're doing here. We are not tripping alone. We are safe. We are mushroom people, okay? But again, thank you so much for watching this. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for being here. Please feel free to check out my other videos. And don't forget to keep it trippy.